If we want to achieve smooth user experiences, we need to begin by looking at workflows. We could say that a workflow consists of a series of steps or tasks. But underneath those tasks is an overall objective or goal that the user is trying to achieve. This objective defines the user's active role, so while carrying out a given role, the user periodically focuses on individual tasks that are related. But if the various steps are difficult to get to, the user has to spend a lot of energy navigating from place to place. This makes it hard to keep the overall goal in mind and produces a disconnected user experience. A modal dialog is a special window that temporarily appears over the top of a main screen. It allows the user to perform a particular action or task. It does two important things also. It provides some extra screen real estate to present the UI for that special task, and it helps the user stay oriented by keeping the primary screen visible in the background. There's clearly a compatibility between workflows, subtasks, and modal dialogs. Just like the steps in the workflow, modal dialog tasks occupy a user's attention for a relatively short period of time, and then they return back to their primary screen. A modal dialog actually prevents users from interacting with that background screen, so it forces them to focus on the specific task. There are lots of places where we have brief tasks or actions like this in Drupal, but we currently aren't using modal dialogs to accomplish them all, and that leads to discontinuity in the user experience. Let's take a look at the confirmation action for deleting a field in a content type as an example. The fact that the primary interface happens to be in a modal overlay makes things a bit more complex, and we'll examine that aspect another time. But for now, the key point to note is that the primary interface is completely taken over to present the temporary confirmation UI. And that brings a whole set of complications. First, let's look at the extra links that are inherited from that primary interface, that's the overlay. And all of these links distract from the current modal task. Here we have the other tabs for the content type UI, and here we have the close button, which applies to the entire content type UI, but the user could easily interpret that as cancelling the action and may expect to just go back to the primary administrative screen. And here we have the many links that form the breadcrumb, none of which are important or even safe exits for this modal action. And speaking of wrong exits, the user could easily wander off to the main menu or the shortcut bar, leaving the modal task incomplete and terminating their primary objective. Now let's look quickly at another example, confirmation for deleting a user account. But let's look at it from the point of view of language. How easy is it for a user to make sense of the words on the screen? The main prompt that informs the user about the task is off the main real estate and floats instead in the caption area. That prime location on the dialog at the upper left is populated by artifacts from the overlay that are not specific to this modal task and are confusing to read. Now think about this link for a moment. While confirming a user deletion action, the administrator is provided with the capability to actually add a user. Perhaps it's not likely that the administrative user will veer off-road like that, but it's worth keeping in mind that without truly modal behavior to restrict these actions, there are no seatbelts with this user interface. Down below, we get to the meat of the matter, and this is what we want to draw the user's attention to. The user needs to be able to focus almost entirely on this part so they understand what to do and to avoid making a bad decision. Finally, we have two action buttons that are clouded by ambiguous language. The choice appears at first to be either cancel or cancel. Little things like that add up and can place more stress on the user experience. For the last example, I want to take you into a usability black hole, and here's the entrance. The title bar has a link to be able to add the primary task to the shortcuts. But since the overlay title bar has been taken over by the main prompt for the secondary modal task, it's ambiguous what primary task the shortcut refers to. Deleting the shortcut produces another secondary modal task, and this secondary task can also be added to the shortcut bar. If you delete this shortcut, you get a link to put something else up on the shortcut bar again. Can anyone guess what it will actually do? Eventually we fall into the black hole. Now this is just another telltale sign that the primary admin UI and the secondary modal window cannot and should not exist in the same real estate. Modal dialogs are not just useful for confirmation of an action. In fact, confirmation may be one of the weakest examples of modal dialog usage and arguably should be replaced by an undo capability, like this one in the Gmail user interface that uses an inline link to temporarily offer an undo action. A confirmation dialog may be less desirable than a robust undo function, but it's likely to be much more user-friendly than the current approach. The Views interface has some great examples of using the ctools modal dialog for actual configuration. From the UX standpoint, bringing the ctools modal dialog into core is a promising step forward, but as we do that, let's keep in mind the broader usability implications that follow the Views example and go beyond simple confirmation dialogs. Because here's the bigger picture. As web-based user experiences evolve into levels that are as rich as traditional desktop UI systems, we'll find that there are lots more opportunities to place subtasks in modal dialogs, just like desktop applications. So we'll need to accommodate a variety of use cases. Here are some examples of modal dialog types. Now, the specific applications are a random selection from web and desktop context, but the types are fairly universal and will probably run into similar use cases. So beyond the familiar delete confirmation, we've also got yes/no actions, we've got quick actions, and we've got detailed tasks as well, and warnings or alerts, as well as more complex task sequences through modal wizards. Now each of these types of modal dialogs will require their particular action buttons with sensible text strings, and so the various dialog types can be predefined and thus easily reused. And of course they'll need different kinds of content, including optional graphic elements to aid in rapid comprehension. And all of this implies reusable patterns with parametric variations, perfect for a well-designed message box class or module. Now here's where the benefits start to kick in. Designing the core modal dialog functionality to handle all of these use cases can help developers arrive at a better overall architectural solution. Now, by taking into consideration the aspects of the dialog that are fixed and those that are variable or parametric, the basis is formed for articulating a full range of UI patterns, and that goes a long way to helping UX designers and developers communicate precisely. So there's an opportunity here to derive a real benefit for everyone. The developers have a flexible system that can be invoked easily without having to rewrite code or do on-the-fly UX design. The UX designers can specify precisely where a dialog should be used and what type it should be. The site builders using this interface will be more productive because of the smoother workflow, as will other roles where this approach is used. Finally, clients and end users will no doubt benefit from the site builder being able to save more time and energy to focus on the specific business issues of the website. So let's review what we've seen here. Modal dialogs are for specific short-term focused tasks. Get in, do the task, and get out. The tasks are related directly to the background goal or objective, and that background is never far from mind. This balance of background goals and modal tasks can bring a much smoother user experience to interfaces in the site building role, and probably for many others as well.